Have you ever wondered what truly breaks a man? Is it the moment bullets fly overhead? The instant he realizes he might never see home again? Or is it the quiet realization that the person aiming a gun at you is just as terrified, just as human as you? Corporal Daniel Reyes, only 19, crouched behind a palm tree split in half by enemy fire. Sweat ran down his temples despite the early morning chill, and his hands trembled as they clutched a 12-gauge trench shotgun, short-barreled, brutal, and devastating at close range. It wasn't supposed to be his life. He used to hunt ducks with his father on Sunday mornings. Back then, the shotgun felt like a tool, useful, familiar. But today, in the steaming jungles of the Pacific, it felt like a weapon designed to destroy everything he feared becoming. His squad waited quietly. The jungle breathed around them, buzzing insects, dripping leaves, distant artillery rumbling like thunder. Then he heard the voices. Japanese soldiers moving toward the ridge. Daniel whispered to himself, voice cracking, "I don't want to hurt anyone. Please don't make me." But the jungle didn't care, war didn't care, and the enemy was getting closer. The Japanese unit approached in a tight formation, expecting rifles, long rifles like the ones Americans usually carried. They had trained for those. They had bayonet counters, detailed maneuver drills, and strategies to overwhelm riflemen. But nothing in their training prepared them for the roaring thunder of American shotguns. "Now!" the sergeant hissed. Daniel's squad rose from the undergrowth, and the jungle exploded with sound. Shotguns barked like angry gods. Boom! 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 Unlike rifles, their blasts filled the air with shrapnel-like spread, tearing leaves off branches and sending shockwaves echoing through the terrain. Japanese soldiers stumbled back, clutching their ears, their formation shattering instantly. Panic spread, confusion, fear. Daniel fired once, twice, then froze. Because through the smoke he saw a boy, no, a soldier, about his age. Thin, pale, eyes wide with terror. Their gazes collided like two storms meeting head-on. For a moment the world shrank to just the two of them. Neither of them fired, for reasons neither could explain. The battle ended far quicker than Daniel expected. The Japanese retreated in chaos, leaving behind scattered equipment and boot prints sunk into the mud. But Daniel could only see one thing: the young soldier's face. His squad congratulated each other, slapping helmets and checking ammunition. But Daniel stood still, chest tight. "Reyes," Sergeant O'Malley said, "you look like you saw a ghost." He swallowed hard. "Just thinking." That wasn't a ghost. That was a person. Someone who should have been in school. Not a jungle halfway across the planet. Daniel didn't know the boy's name, but somewhere deep inside he knew their paths weren't finished crossing, and he wasn't wrong. Later that afternoon, the squad gathered under a cluster of banyan trees. The briefing was short and brutal. "Gentlemen," the lieutenant said, "Intel reports a group of Japanese soldiers retreating through the central jungle. They're trying to regroup. You're to intercept." Groans spread through the squad. Intercept meant close combat. Close combat meant shotguns. And shotguns meant seeing people's faces before pulling the trigger. Daniel tightened his grip on the weapon, stomach twisting. "Reyes," the sergeant said quietly, "you look pale." "I'm fine," Daniel lied, but his mind kept repeating the same desperate hope. "Please, please let that boy be somewhere far from our route. War rarely grants wishes." 2 hours into their march, the squad stumbled upon a clearing, littered with ration cans and footprints. Someone had been there recently. A faint sound drifted through the trees. A voice, weak, struggling, not English. Daniel froze. Before anyone else noticed, he slipped toward the sound, shotgun lowered. He pushed past thick ferns until he saw him, The same boy from earlier, slumped against a log, clutching a wounded leg. The soldier's eyes widened at Daniel's approach. He tried to lift his rifle, but his strength failed, and the weapon dropped. "Reyes!" the sergeant barked from behind. Daniel's heart raced. He had seconds to act. The boy whispered, "Mizu, water." Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't an enemy. This was a dying kid begging for help. Against every instinct drilled into him, Daniel knelt and offered his canteen. The boy drank desperately, coughing between gulps. Then he whispered something Daniel didn't understand, but the gratitude in his eyes was unmistakable. The boy breathed heavily, his pale fingers trembling as he held the canteen. Daniel pointed at his chest. "Daniel." The boy hesitated, then did the same. Hero. A name, a connection, a reminder that the faces behind the guns had stories, families, dreams. Daniel's sergeant shouted again, "Reyes!" "Step away from him!" Daniel leaned in close, whispering urgently to Hero. "I'll come back. Stay quiet. Don't move." Hero nodded weakly. Daniel placed a leaf canopy over Hero to hide him. Then he forced himself to walk back to the squad. "Just scouting," he said. The sergeant gave him a suspicious glare, but didn't push. They marched on, but Daniel's heart stayed behind. The squad set up camp as night fell. The jungle grew eerily loud, frogs singing, insects buzzing, distant gunfire echoing like thunder far away. Daniel sat with his back against a tree, staring at his boots, replaying the moment he saw Hero's trembling hands. He couldn't stop thinking, if that were me, dying alone in the jungle, wouldn't I want someone to come back? He looked at his sleeping squad mates, exhausted men, good men. Men who wouldn't understand what he was about to do. When the sergeant finally dozed off, Daniel made his decision. He grabbed his canteen, medical kit, and a pouch of rations. Then, silently as a shadow, he slipped away from camp, back into enemy territory, back to Hero. Daniel navigated by moonlight, pushing through thick vines and roots. Every crunch of leaves felt like a rifle crack. Every shadow felt like a soldier waiting to ambush him. But nothing stopped him. When he reached the clearing, he found Hero barely conscious, shivering, breathing shallowly. "Hey, hey," Daniel knelt, lifting Hero's head. "I'm here." Hero's eyes fluttered open. "You came back?" Daniel pulled out bandages and iodine, treating the leg wound carefully. Hero winced but didn't resist. "Why?" Hero whispered. "We... enemies." Daniel hesitated. So many answers raced through his mind. Because you're just a kid. Because I'm tired of watching people die. Because maybe saving one person matters. But he said only, "Because you're human, like me." Hero stared at him silently, then smiled faintly. "Arigato, Daniel." Daniel hid Hero under a small overhang near a stream. The wound was still bad, but bandaged. The boy might survive if no one found him. "I'll bring food tomorrow," Daniel whispered. Hero nodded weakly. Daniel returned to camp just before sunrise, slipping into his sleeping spot as the sergeant stirred. But Sergeant O'Malley wasn't fooled. He stomped over. "Reyes, where were you?" Daniel didn't blink. "Bathroom, stomach issues." The sergeant studied his face, eyes narrowing. After a long moment, he sighed. "Next time, wake me." "I don't need to write a letter home saying you wandered off and got eaten by a crocodile." Daniel nodded, but guilt gnawed at him like a hungry animal. He had lied, and whatever was coming next wouldn't make that lie any easier. The squad received new orders that morning. "Patrol in 30 minutes, the sergeant announced. "We sweep the central jungle. Keep eyes sharp." Daniel's blood ran cold. The central jungle was exactly where Hero was hiding. "No," he whispered under his breath. As they moved out, he walked near the front, subtly suggesting alternate paths. "Sergeant, maybe we should avoid the ravines," Daniel said. "They slow us down." "Orders are orders. Stick to the route." Daniel's pulse hammered. Every step brought them closer to Hero. Every second felt like a countdown. Leaves rustled overhead. Branches snapped under boots. Daniel kept scanning the terrain, praying Hero had moved, praying he was safe. But fate had other plans. Up ahead, a private shouted, "Hey, footprints!" Daniel's heart stopped. They were heading straight toward the place where Hero had been hiding, and Daniel had no idea what they were about to find. The squad pushed deeper into the brush, following the trail of footprints. Daniel's heartbeat became a painful drum in his ears. "Fresh tracks," the private announced. "Someone injured. See the drag marks." Daniel's stomach tightened. He recognized the pattern, Hero's wounded leg. They were heading straight toward the hiding place. The squad approached the small overhang where Daniel had left Hero. Daniel slowed his steps, praying, begging that Hero had moved. The sergeant parted the dense foliage. "Stop," he commanded. The overhang came into view. Empty. No Hero. Only a blood-stained bandage soaked and dried by the morning sun. "Looks like someone patched themselves up and crawled off," the sergeant muttered. He kicked the dirt lightly. "Probably not far." Daniel couldn't breathe. He forced a shrug. "Could be an American, right?" The sergeant snorted. "That neat? No chance." But Daniel exhaled softly, part relief, part dread. Hero had moved. But where? And was he walking toward safety, or deeper into a battlefield? The heat grew suffocating as the squad climbed toward a rocky ravine. Daniel's hands felt heavy, his shotgun sticking to his palms with sweat. The lieutenant's voice crackled over the field radio. "Squad 1, prepare for assault. Enemy forces massing ahead." Daniel's breath hitched. Another confrontation. More death. More faces he couldn't forget. The squad advanced, entering the ravine's shadowy corridor. The towering rock walls funneled sound strangely. Every footstep seemed amplified. Then the world erupted. A burst of Japanese gunfire tore through the air, ricocheting off the stones. The squad dove for cover. "Incoming ambush!" someone yelled. Daniel rolled behind a boulder as bullets peppered the ground. He could hear men crying out, the thud of bodies dropping. He peeked over the rock and fired 2 booming shotgun blasts. The recoil slammed into his shoulder like a hammer. "Keep pushing forward," the sergeant screamed. But Daniel wasn't thinking about strategy. He was thinking of Hero, somewhere in this ravine, maybe watching this unfold, maybe trapped between both sides, maybe dying. Every shot felt like it pushed Daniel further from the person he wanted to be. Daniel was reloading when a shadow appeared to his right. He spun, finger on the trigger. "Daniel!" The voice was strained, familiar, impossible. "Hero!" Daniel froze. Hero stumbled forward from a crack in the rocks, his leg still bleeding through fresh makeshift bandages. Behind him were 2 other Japanese soldiers, injured, unarmed, pale from fatigue. They did not raise weapons. They did not shout. Hero turned to them and said something urgently in Japanese. The injured men nodded. Then Hero stepped into full view of both sides, raising his arms. "Yamero!" he shouted to his own countrymen entrenched across the ravine. "Stop!" His voice cracked but carried. Through the chaos, Daniel saw the entrenched Japanese soldiers glance at each other. Confused by the command coming from a wounded comrade, Hero shouted again, louder, angrier, desperate, and slowly, impossibly, the gunfire stopped. Silence flooded the ravine. Daniel couldn't believe it. Hero had risked his life, again, to stop the fighting, to protect Daniel, to protect everyone. "Move!" Daniel yelled to his squad. "They've stopped. Go! The sergeant didn't understand how or why the ceasefire happened, but he didn't waste time questioning a miracle. Squad, fall back, now! The Americans sprinted across the ravine, boots slipping on loose stones. They dragged wounded men, supported limping teammates, scrambled over debris like desperate refugees fleeing a storm. Daniel glanced at Hero, who stood trembling, one hand pressed to his bloody thigh, the other still raised in a signal of peace. "Come with us," Daniel shouted over the echoing silence. Hero shook his head. "Can't. My men need me." "You'll die out here." Hero smiled softly, a sad, tired smile. "Maybe, but better to die helping than killing." Daniel's throat tightened. The ravine blurred through the tears he refused to let fall. "But they'll execute you if they discover you stopped the attack." Hero lowered his eyes. "Some acts worth risk." The weight of those words crushed Daniel. He reached out, gripping Hero's shoulder. "I'll come back for you." Hero held his gaze. "No," he whispered. "You must live your life." Daniel's squad regrouped in a safer area outside the ravine. Medics treated the wounded, officers whispered urgently about the inexplicable ceasefire, and men muttered rumors about guardian angels. Daniel sat alone on a log, hands trembling. His heart felt split in two. Then he felt someone near him. Hero had followed, limping, slow but determined. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel whispered, standing quickly. Hero smiled faintly, wanted to say, "Goodbye." Daniel's chest constricted. "You don't have to." But Hero pressed a shaking hand against Daniel's mouth to quiet him. "I know this war ends. For you," Hero said. "Maybe not for me." Daniel's eyes watered despite his efforts to stay strong. "You should have been my friend a long time ago," he said. Hero nodded. "We are friends." Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden cross. His father had carved it for him before he deployed. He pressed it gently into Hero's hand. "This is for you. Keep it safe." Hero's fingers closed around it with reverence. "I keep," he promised. They held each other's gaze one last time. Then Hero turned and disappeared into the jungle. Daniel watched him leave, knowing deep down he would never see him again. And he was right. For 5 decades. War ended. Daniel went home. But home didn't feel the same. He worked the farm. He married a girl he'd written letters to during the war. He raised 2 children who grew into adults he was proud of. Yet, every so often, on quiet evenings, Daniel sat on his porch with a cup of coffee and stared at the tree line, remembering the boy in the jungle. The boy who should have been an enemy, but chose to be a friend. He wrote letters, dozens. "Dear Hero, I hope you lived. I hope the world treated you better than the battlefield did. You saved me. I never forgot." He kept every letter in a small wooden box under his bed. He never mailed them, not because he didn't want to, but because he had no address, no village name, no certainty Hero was alive. But he kept writing, because writing kept Hero alive. 50 years passed like a slow breeze turning into a storm. Daniel's hair turned white. His hands grew lined and weathered. But his memories of Hero stayed young, preserved in the amber of trauma, gratitude, and hope. One spring morning, as Daniel tended to tomato vines, his daughter approached holding an envelope. "Dad," she said, puzzled, "you got a letter. From Japan." Daniel froze. His heart tripped over itself. "What?" She handed him the envelope, thin, delicate, with foreign stamps and careful handwriting. Inside was a sheet of paper, folded neatly as if handled with reverence. Daniel's hands shook violently as he opened it. The letter read, "Dear Daniel, if this reaches you, then life is kinder than I imagined. I survived the war. I healed. I lived quietly. I have children now, grandchildren. I kept the wooden cross always. It reminded me that kindness can exist even in a place meant for hate. Thank you, my friend, for saving me." Hero Daniel pressed the letter to his chest and cried harder than he ever had. Not because of sorrow, but because something inside him, something wounded long ago, finally healed. His daughter saw his tears and hugged him. "Dad, do you know who this is?" Daniel laughed softly through his tears. "I know exactly who he is." The following spring, Daniel's daughter arranged a trip. "Dad, we're going to Japan," she said. Daniel protested. His knees hurt. He tired easily. But she insisted. And secretly, Daniel hoped. When he arrived at a small village near Hiroshima, he saw a crowd gathered. Among them was an old man, leaning on a cane, limping slightly, his right leg stiff and scarred. Daniel recognized that limp instantly. "Hero?" he whispered. The old man lifted his head. His eyes widened. "Daniel." They walked toward each other slowly, tears already streaming, and when they embraced, it was as if 50 years folded into a single moment. Their families watched in awe, two old men, once enemies, now hugging like brothers separated by destiny. Hero whispered, "You lived a good life?" Daniel nodded. "I tried." "You?" Hero smiled. "I tried too." And that was enough. Before Daniel returned home, he and Hero sat together under a cherry blossom tree, their grandchildren playing nearby. They decided to record a message for the younger generation, something to leave behind. Daniel spoke first. "War teaches fear, but fear doesn't have to teach hate." Hero nodded. "Kindness, strongest weapon, stronger than any gun." Daniel placed his hand on Hero's. "We were soldiers," he said softly, "but we chose to be human." Hero added, "And that changed everything." Their story spread across the internet within days, two men who should have killed each other instead choosing compassion. It touched millions. It reminded people that humanity doesn't die in war unless we choose to kill it ourselves. And somewhere in a quiet village in Japan, Hero kept a small wooden cross beside his bed, a reminder of a promise made in a jungle long ago, a promise that somehow, miraculously, lived long enough to bring two old men back together again.